Renee Williams walked into the clothing store with quiet confidence. She wore a soft beige sweater, comfortable jeans, and sneakers. Her hair was tied back, and she carried a simple leather bag. There was nothing flashy about her. She looked like any other customer. But there was something special about Renee, something no one in that store knew. She was the owner of the entire chain. Renee had built the brand from scratch over 10 years. She had opened stores in many cities, hired hundreds of employees, and created a name people respected. But today, she wasn't here as the owner. She was here to observe, to see how her staff treated customers, especially those who didn't look rich. She had heard rumors, some emails, a few anonymous complaints. "Some of your staff are rude to people of color," one message had said. "They assume we can't afford your clothes." It hurt her deeply, so she decided to check for herself. Inside the store, soft music played. Mannequins in silk dresses stood by the windows. Shelves were perfectly arranged. Everything looked perfect, but looks could lie. Renee walked to a rack of jackets and gently touched the fabric. It was high quality, just like she had designed it. She checked the price tag, $495. She smiled. The price was right. The quality was worth it. Behind the counter, the store manager, Brad, noticed her. Tall, in his late 40s, Brad wore a fitted suit and an expensive watch. He saw Renee and frowned slightly. To him, she didn't look like someone who belonged here. He leaned toward a young female employee standing near him. "Keep an eye on her," he whispered. The girl blinked. "Sir, you heard me. People like her don't come here to shop." Renee didn't hear the words, but she could feel the eyes. She wasn't new to this kind of treatment. Still, she stayed calm. She didn't want to judge too soon. She moved toward another section and picked up a beautiful navy coat. It was one of her personal designs, limited edition, only 5 pieces made. She smiled again, remembering how proud she had felt when it first launched. As she ran her fingers along the fabric, she heard heavy footsteps behind her. Brad. He walked over quickly, with a fake smile, but his voice wasn't friendly. "That coat is very expensive," he said. Renee turned toward him. "Yes, it's beautiful." Brad narrowed his eyes. "Can I help you with something?" "No, I'm just browsing," she replied politely. Brad looked her up and down. "You might want to check the clearance section. This isn't really affordable for everyone." Renee's smile faded slightly. She wasn't angry, just disappointed. "I can afford it," she said, calm and clear. Brad didn't believe her. He shook his head. "If you're done touching the merchandise, I'll ask you to leave." Other customers began to look. A mother with her teenage daughter glanced over. A couple near the Jane section paused. Renee asked, "Why do you want me to leave?" Brad crossed his arms. "Because you don't belong here. You're making my staff uncomfortable." At that moment, Renee realized the rumors were true. She stood tall, her voice steady. "I'm not stealing. I'm not loud. I'm not breaking any rules. But you're harassing me." Brad didn't care. He reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone. "I'm calling security," he said, walking away. Renee watched him, still standing by the coat. The young female employee who had been told to watch her looked nervous. She walked over and whispered, "I'm sorry. I didn't think you were doing anything wrong." Renee gave her a small smile. "Thank you for saying that." In the distance, Brad spoke on the phone, his voice loud enough to hear. "Yes, I need someone here right now. We have a situation. A suspicious woman refusing to leave." Renee sat down on one of the benches near the fitting rooms. She took a deep breath and calmly waited. She knew what would happen next. But she also knew something Brad didn't. And when the truth came out, it would change everything. 5 minutes later, 2 security guards entered the store. They were tall, serious-looking, and dressed in black uniforms. They walked straight to Brad, who stood near the entrance, pointing toward Renee. "There she is," Brad said, his voice loud and confident. "That woman. She's been touching expensive items, refusing to leave, and making my staff uncomfortable. The guards looked in the direction he was pointing. Renee sat calmly on the bench, her hands folded in her lap. She didn't look angry. She didn't look scared. She looked like someone who knew exactly what was going on. One of the guards walked up to her. "Ma'am," he said kindly, "we received a report. The store manager says you're causing problems. May we speak with you outside?" Renee stood up slowly. "I haven't caused any problems," she replied. "I was just browsing the clothes, same as anyone else." The second guard raised an eyebrow. "You weren't yelling or stealing?" "No," Renee said. "I was just looking. He assumed I didn't belong here because of how I look." The first guard glanced over at Brad. He was starting to feel unsure. This didn't look like the threat Brad had described. Brad, still standing nearby, scoffed. "She's lying. She tried to grab a jacket that's worth more than her whole outfit." The guard turned back to Renee. "Can I ask you a question, ma'am? Do you have a receipt or proof of purchase?" "I didn't buy anything yet," she said. "I was still deciding." The guard nodded. "Okay. So technically, you haven't broken any rules." Renee looked straight at Brad. "But I've been treated like a criminal." A few customers had stopped shopping and were now watching. Whispers floated around the store. One woman even pulled out her phone and began recording. Brad was getting nervous. "This is my store," he snapped, "and I have the right to remove anyone who makes trouble." "That's where you're wrong," Renee said calmly. "This isn't your store." Brad laughed. "Oh, really? Then whose is it?" "Yours." The security guards looked at each other. Renee stepped forward. "Actually, yes, it is mine. I'm Renee Williams. I'm the founder, owner, and CEO of this brand." The store went silent. Brad blinked. He opened his mouth but said nothing. "That's not possible," he whispered. You're lying." Renee pulled out her wallet and showed her ID. She also handed the guards a business card with her name and title on it. One of the guards checked it and nodded. "She's telling the truth," he said. Brad's face turned pale. His hands began to shake. "No, this has to be some kind of joke." Renee took a deep breath and looked around the store. "I came here today, dressed like this, for a reason. I wanted to see how customers are treated, especially those who don't look rich." Her voice was calm, but there was power in every word. "And you, Mr. Brad, failed that test." Brad took a step back. "Wait, please. I didn't know." "You judged me the moment I walked in," she said. "You made assumptions. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. You tried to humiliate me in my own store." The younger employee, the one Brad had ordered to keep an eye on Renee, stepped forward. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry. I didn't know either. I was scared to speak up." Renee nodded. "Thank you for being honest." One of the guards turned to her. "Ma'am, would you like us to escort him out?" Renee looked at Brad, who now looked like he wanted to disappear. She thought for a moment, then said, "Yes, please remove him from the premises. He is no longer an employee of this company." Brad tried to protest, but the guards had already moved closer. As they escorted him out, Renee turned to the other customers. "I want to apologize to anyone who saw what happened. This isn't how we treat people in my stores. Everyone deserves respect." The woman recording the video gave Renee a thumbs up. "You handled that with class," she said. Renee smiled. "Thank you." She walked over to the navy coat, the same one Brad had tried to stop her from touching, and picked it up. She brought it to the counter and paid in full. Then she turned back to the staff. "Team meeting. Tomorrow morning. First thing. We're going to make some changes." The staff nodded, and for the first time, they looked at her with real respect, not just for her title, but for her strength. Outside the store, Brad stood in the parking lot, still stunned. He had tried to throw out a woman he thought was a nobody, but she had turned out to be his boss. and he had just lost everything. The next morning, the staff of the clothing store arrived earlier than usual. Everyone had heard what happened the day before. The news had spread fast, not just through the employees but also on social media. The video of Renee being mistreated by Brad had gone viral overnight. Thousands of people had commented, praising her calm and powerful response. Inside the break room, the mood was tense. Some employees looked nervous. Others whispered quietly to each other. "I didn't even know she was the owner," one cashier said. "I feel bad. We should have stood up for her," another added. At exactly 9:00 a.m., the office door opened, and Renee walked in. She wore the same simple outfit as yesterday, but this time, no one doubted who she was. "Good morning, everyone," Renee said, smiling gently. "Please, have a seat." The staff slowly sat down. All eyes were on her. "I know yesterday was difficult," Renee began, "and I know many of you were shocked to find out who I really am." A few people nodded. "I didn't dress like a CEO because I wanted to see this store from the eyes of a regular customer. I wanted to feel how someone without expensive clothes or flashy jewelry is treated here. And what I saw," she paused, "broke my heart." There was silence in the room. I was judged because of the color of my skin and the simplicity of my clothes. Not a single person asked who I was. Not one person stepped in when I was humiliated. The staff looked down. Some shifted in their chairs. A few had tears in their eyes. Renee continued, "But I'm not here to punish you. I'm here to teach." She walked closer to the front of the room. "Brad is no longer with the company. His actions don't match the values I built this brand on. We stand for respect, kindness, and equality. And starting today, we are going to make sure every single person who walks into this store feels welcomed." One of the younger workers raised her hand. "Miss Renee, I'm sorry I didn't speak up. I was scared. I thought if I said something, I'd lose my job." Renee nodded. "Thank you for your honesty. I understand that fear. That's why I want to create a new environment, where speaking up for what's right is not only allowed, it's encouraged." A manager sitting in the back cleared her throat. "We've never had training on these things. Maybe that's part of the problem." "You're right," Renee said. "And that changes today. We will have regular training on how to treat customers with dignity. We'll talk about unconscious bias. We'll learn how to make people feel seen, respected, and safe." The room began to shift. The tension slowly turned into hope. Renee then smiled. "Also, starting next month, everyone gets a raise." Gasps filled the room. "I believe people work better when they are valued. I want you to know you matter. This store is nothing without the people who show up every day." The team began clapping. Some even cheered. "I have one more thing to say," Renee added, raising her hand gently. The room grew quiet again. "I forgive all of you." There were tears now, real ones. None of us are perfect, but we can choose to be better. And I see potential in each of you. That's why I'm giving everyone here a second chance. The room erupted in applause again. After the meeting, Renee stayed behind to talk with her staff one-on-one. She answered their questions, listened to their concerns, and thanked them for their hard work. Later that day, customers began to walk in, many of them inspired by the viral video. One woman said, "I came to shop here because of you, Miss Renee. What you did yesterday gave me hope." Renee smiled and helped her pick out a jacket. Across the store, the employees worked with more care, more warmth. They smiled at customers, offered help, and treated everyone equally, just like Renee had taught them. And though she still wore her simple clothes, everyone now saw her for who she truly was. Not just a business owner, not just a CEO, but a woman of grace, strength, and heart, changing her world, one small act at a time. The video of Renee's calm strength spread like wildfire. By the next morning, it had been shared by thousands of people. Blogs picked it up, influencers talked about it, and news channels ran the headline. Store owner mistaken for thief. Teaches the world a lesson in grace. People all over the city and beyond were talking about it. Strangers who had never heard of the store now wanted to support it. Many said they were inspired by Renee's powerful message about dignity and respect. Renee didn't post the video herself. A teenager who had witnessed the event secretly recorded it and shared it online. The caption read, "This woman didn't shout, she didn't fight, but she left everyone speechless. Be like Renee." The next few days were busier than the store had ever seen. Customers waited in lines outside just to meet her. Some came to shop, some came to apologize, and some just came to say thank you. A man in a suit approached Renee with his daughter. "You don't know me," he said softly, "but my daughter saw your video. She said, 'Daddy, that's what being strong looks like.'" His eyes filled with tears. "I just wanted to shake your hand." Renee smiled and hugged the girl. Inside the store, the staff moved differently now. There was more kindness in the air. They welcomed every person warmly, no matter how they looked, dressed, or spoke. Even the design of the store changed. Renee had quietly hired a local artist to paint a mural near the entrance. The image showed a group of diverse people standing together under the words, "Respect is always in fashion." Customers stopped to take pictures with it. Many tagged the store online, using hashtags like #StandWithRenee and #MoreThanClothes. But not everyone reacted with love. A few people online said she had set Brad up. Others claimed she was looking for attention. Some even sent rude messages to the store's social media page. Renee read every single one, and she replied with the same message each time, "I forgive you too." Back at the store, Renee gathered her team again for a small lunch. "I know this attention won't last forever," she said, gently holding a sandwich. "But the lesson will. People saw something true in that video, and it's our job now to live that truth every single day." The team nodded. Their respect for Renee had grown 10 times stronger. She wasn't just a boss to them anymore. She was a leader. Later that afternoon, a woman walked into the store nervously. She wore a gray coat and kept her head low. "Can I help you?" Renee asked kindly. The woman looked up slowly. It was Brad's wife. I just wanted to say I'm sorry," she whispered. "What my husband did was wrong. He's lost his job, and now he's lost a lot of friends too." Renee stayed calm. "I'm sorry to hear that. I told him he should apologize, but he's too ashamed to show his face." The woman continued, "I know it's not my place, but thank you for handling it the way you did." Renee nodded gently. Sometimes the best way to teach someone is through peace, not punishment. The woman left quietly. And for the rest of the day, Renee thought about what forgiveness really meant. That night, after the store closed, Renee sat alone at one of the tables. She looked around at everything she had built, not just the shelves and clothes, but the people, the spirit, and the message behind it all. In her heart, she knew something had changed forever. This wasn't just a store anymore. It was a symbol of hope, a place where people could feel seen, and a reminder that even in a world full of judgment, kindness can still win. 3 days after the video went viral, Renee arrived at the store early. The sun was still rising, casting a soft golden light across the sidewalk. She unlocked the glass doors, breathing in the calm silence before the busy day. She flipped the sign to "Open" and walked to the back to prepare fresh coffee for her team. She believed in starting each day with warmth, both for her staff and for herself. As she poured the coffee, she heard the soft chime of the front door. That was strange. It was too early for customers. She peeked out from the break room and saw a man in a dark suit standing quietly near the entrance. He wasn't looking at the clothes. He was looking around the store with interest, almost like he was studying something. Renee stepped forward slowly. "Good morning, sir. We're not open yet, but..." The man turned around with a polite smile. "I know. I just wanted a quiet moment before the rush." He held out a business card. Renee took it and read it carefully. Marcus Lane, Regional Director, L&B Department Stores. Renee raised her eyebrows. L&B was one of the biggest luxury retail chains in the country. I saw your story, Marcus said. I've watched the video. More than once. You handled yourself with dignity. That kind of strength, it doesn't go unnoticed. Renee stayed calm, but her heart beat faster. Marcus looked around again. Your store has a unique soul. It's not just about clothes. It's about character. People feel something when they walk in here. Thank you, Renee said softly. That means a lot. I'm not here just to praise you, Marcus said, stepping closer. I'm here with an offer. Renee's breath caught. I want to feature your store in our upcoming nationwide campaign, he continued. A special collaboration. We'll showcase your designs, your values, and your story. On billboards, in magazines, even on television. Renee blinked. Why me? Marcus smiled. Because people trust you now. And when people trust a name, they follow it. They support it. They believe in it. Renee looked down at the card again. Her hands trembled slightly. This is more than business, Marcus added. This is about changing the face of retail. You've already started that movement. I just want to help you carry it forward. She didn't know what to say. For a long moment, silence filled the store. Finally, Renee took a deep breath. I need time to think. Marcus nodded respectfully. Of course, I'll give you a week. But just know, whatever you choose, the world is watching now. And it's cheering for you. He left as quietly as he had entered. The moment the door closed behind him, Renee sat down at the front counter. Her heart was full, not because of fame, not because of business, but because she finally felt seen. Later that day, Renee shared the news with her staff during lunch. They stared in shock. One of them dropped her spoon. TV? Billboards? One of them asked. Our little store. No, Renee said with a soft smile. Not little anymore. But that wasn't the only surprise that day. Just before closing, a familiar voice echoed through the store. Excuse me, can I speak with Renee? She turned and saw Brad. He looked different now. Less proud. More human. He held his hands together and walked slowly toward her. His eyes were filled with regret. I've come to apologize, he said. No cameras. No show. Just the truth. Renee stood silent. Brad took a deep breath. I judged you without knowing you. I made assumptions because of how you looked. And I'm ashamed. I lost my job. I lost respect. But the worst part is, I lost the chance to treat a good person with kindness when I had the chance. The staff watched quietly. I'm not asking for anything, he added. Not forgiveness. Just a chance to say I was wrong. Renee looked at him for a long time. Then she nodded. I accept your apology, she said, not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace. Brad lowered his head. Thank you. As he walked out, Renee felt something lift from her chest. The past was behind her. And the future. It was waiting with open arms. The next morning, the city buzzed with excitement. Newspapers showed Renee's photo with the headline, From Customer to Queen. The woman who changed everything. Her story was everywhere. Social media, blogs, even news channels were talking about her. But inside her store, Renee stayed humble. She arrived early, like always. Cleaned the counters, brewed coffee, checked inventory. It was still her place. Fame hadn't changed that. Her staff walked in, one by one, all with bright eyes and wide smiles. They were proud to work with her. Not for her, but with her. Boss, we got 10 online orders before breakfast, one employee said. Another added, people are asking when you'll start your own fashion line. Renee laughed. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, one step at a time. But deep inside, something had changed. A door had opened in her heart. A quiet confidence had settled in. She no longer felt like she needed to prove herself. She just had to be herself. At 10 a.m., a delivery truck stopped outside the store. Two men wheeled in several large boxes with the L&B logo on the side. "What's this?" one of the employees asked. Inside the boxes were banners, mannequins, and display boards. At the very top was a large poster, introducing the Renee collection. Coming soon. Renee stared at it in shock. She hadn't even signed anything yet. Just then, her phone rang. It was Marcus Lane. "I hope you don't mind," he said over the phone. We got excited. The world's already asking for more. Renee smiled. "I haven't even agreed yet." "I know," he said, "but this time, you're the one holding the power." Later that day, a small crowd gathered outside the store. Some were customers, others were reporters. A few were just curious people who had heard the story. They weren't there for gossip. They were there for inspiration. One little girl stood by the window, staring in at Renee. She looked about 8 years old, holding her mother's hand. Renee walked out and bent down to the girl's level. "Hi there. You're the lady from the phone," the girl whispered shyly. "What phone?" Renee asked, smiling. "The one where the man yelled at you, but you stayed strong." Renee's smile softened. "That wasn't easy. But you did it anyway." Renee nodded. "Yes, I did." The little girl held out a folded drawing. Renee opened it and saw a picture of a brown woman wearing a crown, standing in front of a store. Underneath it were the words, "You are my hero." Renee blinked away tears. "Thank you. This means more than you know." That night, Renee sat alone in the office. The store was closed. The lights were off, but she wasn't tired. She was full. She looked around at the space she built with her own hands. Every brick, every shelf, every hanger told a story. And now, the whole world wanted to hear it. She pulled out her notebook and started writing. Dreams for the future. Open 2 more branches, one in Atlanta, one in Chicago. Hire more staff from underrepresented communities. Start a mentorship program for young women of color. Release her own fashion line with a message. Strength, grace, power. Renee closed the notebook and smiled. Tomorrow, she would call Marcus and say yes. Not because she needed his help, but because she was ready to shine on a bigger stage. Back in his tiny apartment across town, Brad watched the news on TV. Renee's face lit up the screen. For the first time in years, Brad felt something good stir inside him. Not jealousy, not anger. Hope. He stood, walked to the mirror, and looked at himself. "I can be better," he whispered. A week later, the boutique looked completely different. The soft jazz music played through new speakers. Warm lights highlighted every corner. A fresh floral scent floated in the air. But the biggest change wasn't in the decor. It was in the people. Customers walked in with respect in their eyes. The same store that once made people feel less than was now a place where everyone felt welcome. Renee stood at the center of it all, her hands folded gently, wearing a dark green suit, elegant, powerful, and calm. Today was the launch of her first collection, the Renee collection. Outside, a crowd had already gathered. Some were curious shoppers, some were influencers, some were reporters, some were girls who just wanted to see someone who looked like them succeed. Her staff stood around her, buzzing with energy. "You ready, boss?" one asked. Renee smiled. "I've been ready for years. I just didn't know it." Right at noon, the doors opened. People clapped as Renee walked out and stood in front of the store's sign. Behind her, a white banner covered the windows, hiding the new display. Renee took the mic, looking at all the faces, hopeful, excited, inspired. "Hi everyone," she said softly. "I don't have a big speech, just a big thank you." The crowd chuckled, leaning in. She continued, "This store was born out of struggle. I worked jobs where people called me girl instead of my name. I've been followed in stores. I've been ignored. I've been doubted. But I never gave up. The crowd went quiet. I opened this place because I believe people deserve better. And when someone tried to take that from me, I realized how strong I really was. A few people wiped tears. She nodded to one of her staff. The banner dropped. Behind it was a beautiful display. Mannequins wearing her new designs. Strong colors, flowing shapes, bold fabrics. Each piece had a tag with one word, worthy. Gasps filled the air. Then cheers. Inside, people walked around in awe. Reporters snapped photos. Influencers filmed their reactions. Little girls took pictures with Renee. One woman came up and said, "I haven't felt this proud in a long time." "Thank you." Another whispered, "I saw myself in you." Renee didn't just sell clothes that day. She gave people hope. Meanwhile, in a quiet corner of the store, someone stood silently watching. It was Brad, the same store manager who once insulted her, the one who called the cops on her, the one who almost lost everything because of one terrible mistake. He had come alone. No cameras, no fanfare, just a quiet heart, full of regret. He watched as Renee laughed with a customer. The same calm grace in her voice, the same warmth in her smile. After a few minutes, he walked up slowly. Renee turned, surprised. "Brad," she said, her voice even. He looked down. I didn't come to cause trouble. I just wanted to say something." The room grew quiet around them. "I'm sorry," he said. "I was wrong. So wrong. I judged you by what you wore, by your skin. I didn't see who you were." Renee looked into his eyes. She could see the truth there, real guilt, real pain. "I lost my job," he continued, "but I gained something else. I saw myself, and I didn't like what I saw. I want to be better." There was a pause. Then Renee did something that stunned everyone. She reached out and shook his hand. "Thank you for saying that," she said. "Growth matters more than perfection." Tears welled in Brad's eyes. And for the first time, in a long time, he smiled. That night, the store was quiet again, but Renee stayed a little longer. She sat at the same table where she once served coffee. She looked around and thought about everything that had changed. Not just the walls or the name, but the world around her. One story had lit a fire. She opened her notebook again and wrote 3 new words. Next, a movement. Because for Renee, this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. 6 months had passed since the big launch. Renee's store was now a known name, not just in the city, but online too. Her designs were worn by students, teachers, artists, even celebrities. The word "worthy" had become more than a fashion tag. It had become a movement. But Renee wasn't finished. She had a bigger dream, to change the whole industry. One evening, she sat in her office, surrounded by sketches and letters from fans. Some were thank you notes. Some were stories. A girl wrote, "I wore your jacket to a job interview. I felt like I belonged." Another said, "For the first time, someone made clothes for bodies like mine." Renee smiled at each note, her heart full. But one letter made her stop. It came from a young waitress in another city. The girl had been humiliated by her manager in front of customers, her only crime, wearing a scarf on her head. She ended her letter with, "I wish I had a place like yours near me." That night, Renee made a decision. The next morning, her team met in the small cafe next to the store. Everyone was used to Renee's ideas by now, but this time, she looked even more serious. "I've been thinking," she said. "Why stop at one store?" The room went quiet. "I want to train women who've been ignored, disrespected, or underestimated, just like I was. I want to give them jobs, skills, and confidence." Someone asked, "Like an academy?" "Exactly," Renee nodded. "But not just fashion. Leadership, business, voice." There was silence. Then applause. A month later, the first Worthy Woman Academy opened in a small rented space near René's shop. The walls were painted soft gold, with big mirrors and bold quotes like, "You deserve to be seen. You are not too loud. You are heard. No one decides your worth but you." Women from different backgrounds joined, young and old, shy and bold. They learned how to design clothes, speak in interviews, run a store, and own their story. Every weekend, René visited in person. She didn't just teach, she listened. One girl said, "I used to feel invisible. Now I feel like fire." René smiled. That was the goal. Then, one day, someone unexpected showed up. It was Brad, the ex-manager who once called security on her. He looked nervous as he waited outside the academy building. René stepped out and saw him. "Brad," she said, surprised but calm. He held a box in his hands. "I heard about the academy," he said. "I brought these." He opened the box. Inside were books on business, leadership, and empathy. Some were old. Some looked new. "I've been teaching a local youth group," he said. "They remind me of me, before I saw the truth." René took the books gently. "Thank you," she said. "People do change." 1 year later, a reporter interviewed René for a magazine. They sat in her store, now full of life and joy. The reporter asked, "When did you know your story mattered?" René thought for a moment. "It was the day someone tried to erase me," she said. "And I realized my story was too big to erase." The reporter smiled. "And what do you hope others learn from you?" René leaned forward. "That power doesn't always look loud. It can be quiet, calm, patient, but it's still power. And no one should ever be told they don't belong, especially not in a place they built." That night, René walked through the store alone again. She looked at the same spot where Brad once embarrassed her. But now it held a photo, her standing with the first graduates of the Worthy Woman Academy. Below it, a quote, "What they meant for shame became my strength." René touched the frame, smiled, and turned off the lights. The store faded into soft shadows. But the story, it had just begun.